Hi guys, my name is Akarshan Kathuria from Rise Up. Today I want to talk to you a bit about the buying procedure for foreign investors in Dubai. I want to cover areas such as locations where foreign investors can buy properties, what are the different types of properties they can buy, and the procedures basically in order to acquire those properties. So I want to start off by talking to you a bit about the category of different properties that we have in UAE. So there are three different types of areas and properties that we can look at. The first one being areas which are limited only to GCC nationals to buy. GCC comprises of seven Gulf countries. So citizens of these regions are able to buy in areas. Examples of these areas are Al Garhoot, Dera, Bardabai, Karama, certain segments of Jumeirah, for example. Then there's a second category which is called leasehold. Within leasehold areas, anyone can buy, but there is a limitation in terms of the timeline. So you either have leasehold for 49 years or you have leasehold for 99 years. Some of the leasehold areas are Dubai Silicon Oasis, where you generally get leasehold for 99 years, Dubai Investment Park, where you get leasehold for 49 years. So the concept of leasehold is essentially if you own a property that's leasehold, so you own the property that you're able to buy. It could be an office, it could be an apartment, or it could be a villa. But you don't have any kind of ownership over the piece of land that it's built on. But a lot of people get confused in the sense that if they're buying a leasehold property, that they only have it for 49 years or 99 years. So essentially the lease duration is for 49 years or 99 years, but come that timeline wherein you've completed that lease duration, you're then able to renew it from the developer for another set of 49 or 99 years by paying a certain renewal fee. So leasehold properties still very popular in certain areas of Dubai. It's just that they have a time limitation on them. So that's leasehold. And the third category of assets are categorized under the freehold category, wherein any nationality can buy and they own the property forever. And essentially the property that they're buying, be it an apartment, be it a villa, be it an office, so the land on which that property is built, they own a piece of that land as well, and the property in which they are residing, for example, they own that completely. So freehold areas, as you're all rightly aware, are all the new locations in Dubai, such as Downtown, Business Bay, Palm Jumeirah, Dubai Marina, JLT. All of these regions, pretty much all the development happening in New Dubai is categorized as freehold, where 90+% percentage of transactions are happening. There's another segment of areas in Dubai which is called free zone area. They're not to be confused with freehold area, because free zone areas basically are able to dictate the kind of businesses that can run within that region. GLT, for example, is a free zone wherein you can have a company established, which is a free zone entity, but it's still a freehold area. So like I said, there are three different categories of locations. One limited only to GCC citizens that they can buy, leasehold areas where anyone can buy with a certain time limitation on them, and freehold area where absolutely anyone can buy without any time limitation on them. So majority of the transactions are happening within the freehold location. So that's one segment that I wanted to talk to you guys about. Now, in terms of foreign investors buying into freehold areas, there are two different asset classes that they can look at. One being your ready properties and one being your off-plan, your under construction properties. Let me take you through the buying procedure for ready properties, and keep in mind that this remains the same, be it a residential asset, be it a commercial asset, be it an entire building or a single unit. It all remains the same. So basically, when a foreign investor is looking to buy a ready property, the procedure of purchase has to be such that once they've finalized on the property that they would like to buy, they enter into a contract F, also called MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, between themselves and the seller of the property. And this contract F is generated by the agent. It could be generated by the buyer's broker, it could be generated by the seller's broker. So this contract F is the agreement between the buyer and the seller, which covers all the terms and conditions of this particular transaction, such as the purchase price, the timeline of completion of the transfer, whether they're buying on mortgage or is it an entirely cash transaction, under whose name is the purchase being made, what are the details of the particular property, does it have a tenancy linked to it, does it have a mortgage on it. All those details are completely covered within the contract. But it's also vital that the buyer, along with signing this contract, issues a 10% security deposit check, which has to be issued by a UAE based bank account. So the purpose of this check is that in the instance that the buyer decides to back out of that transaction for no reason that is not linked to a third party, for their own reasons, perhaps they are not able to secure the financing for it, not through mortgage but personal financing. They're not able to secure their own financing for it, or they feel like the market is going down and they are paying a high price for it. Whatever reason it may be that the buyer chooses not to go ahead with it, if it's not a reason that aligns with the contract, that's when this 10% penalty is enacted and given to the seller. But apart from that, it's a 10% security deposit check that's written by the buyer and returned back to the buyer on the day of successful transfer. So it's very important that the buyer have an active UAE bank account in order to issue this 10% check. So a lot of foreign buyers come into place in Dubai looking to buy a property, and this is one of the hindrances that they face, that they don't have a UAE bank account set up. There are other alternative solutions to it. For example, you could ask the broker to issue a check on your behalf, although it's not a standard practice and a lot of agencies would choose not to do that. You could ask a family member or a friend to prepare the check as well on your behalf, but again, this is not standard practice. So it's important for the buyer to have his or her bank account set up. Anyway, so once the contract F is entered, the seller goes ahead and applies for the no objection certificate from the developer for that particular property. If there is a mortgage on that particular property from the seller's side, the bank arranges the liability letter, by which time the buyer is preparing all their payments. So another reason why the buyer's bank account should be active, operational with funds in Dubai, is because in order to buy a ready property on the day of the transfer, when everything else is in place, such as the NOC, mortgage clearance, all of those things in the place, and the buyer and the seller themselves or through a power of attorney are present, the buyer has to issue the seller's payment through a form of a manager's check. For a lot of you who don't know what a manager's check is, it's equivalent to a banker's draft. So if you have a bank account in Dubai, you just go to your bank and notify them that you want to issue a manager's check under the seller's name. And the bank then deducts or debits the money from your account and essentially issues a check from their own side. So for the seller, the check is issued from the bank, not even from you as an individual, because it doesn't even have the buyer's name on it. It has the bank's name on it. So in order to do that, the buyer ought to have a local bank account. So that's a very important aspect that a lot of buyers who are foreign buyers, who are not based in Dubai, do tend to struggle with. Again, there are alternative solutions to this, where there are escrow agents, for example, or lawyers, for example, to whom you can make the transfer, and then they can issue the manager's check on your behalf. But of course, then those kind of transfers do come with certain cost element as well. And once again, this is not the standard practice. So it's kind of important for the buyer to have these kind of elements in place before committing themselves to a particular transaction. So this is basically the step that a foreign buyer would take to buy a ready property in Dubai. Now, when it comes to buying off-plan property in Dubai, the process is fairly shorter, I would say, and doesn't even require the buyer to actually be present in Dubai, because any kind of payments that are made to the developer are done by way of either online transfer or a check that can be issued from a local bank account. So if a buyer doesn't have a local bank account, they can go ahead with the online bank transfer directly to the developer's account, and the developer then prepares all the booking forms in order to get them signed by the buyer. Upon signing, the buyer would return those booking forms to the developer along with issuing the 4% Ukut payment, which is a payment that goes to Dubai Land Department for your property registration, after which the developer would then issue a sales purchase agreement called as the SPA, which is a thick booklet, in some cases comprising of more than 60 odd pages, which is then signed by the buyer first and then by the seller. And with that document, the official registration is done in Dubai Land Department. So an off-plan purchase by a buyer can be done without having a bank account in Dubai, without the buyer traveling to Dubai. It can all be done online. And of course, once the buyer has obtained the Rukut registration on that particular property, they are then able to go out and acquire any kind of residency visa, depending on the criteria and if they meet the requirements. Same goes for ready property as well. Once the buyer has acquired the ready property, be it through their own funds or mortgage, they can then go out and obtain the investor visa or the golden visa. Now, talking a bit also about setting up of bank accounts in Dubai. So even a non-resident who doesn't have any kind of residency in Dubai as of now has the opportunity to go to a bank and set up a non-resident bank account. Albeit the procedure is a bit longer, it takes more time as the bank has to do more KYC on the particular client. They have to look at their income, they have to look at their audited bank financials if they own a business back home, and based on that they are able to set up the bank account. Whereas for a resident, opening up of a bank account is fairly easy and quicker for that matter as well. So this is basically two of the main differences when it comes down to buying ready property or it comes down to buying off-plan property. Now, taking this one step further, I mentioned earlier wherein majority of the properties bought, be it residential, commercial, building or individual unit, they're all the same. The only difference that arises is when an individual is buying a ready property or an off-plan property which is residential, then there is no VAT implication. There's no VAT payable in terms of the sale price. But whenever an individual is buying a commercial property, it could be an office, it could be a retail, it could be a hotel apartment, it could be a service department, any of those assets, then they have to pay a 5% VAT on their purchase price, in addition to the 4% Dubai Land Department fee that they do pay for transfer of that particular property. So this is the primary difference in terms of buying a residential and a commercial property. Another topic of discussion which a lot of people ask us are costs related to buying of off-plan and ready property. So when you're buying an off-plan property, the cost to the buyer is essentially the 4% Dubai Land Department fee, which is also called the Uqud fee, which is the 4% of your purchase price. And there are generally admin fee which the developer charges, which can vary anywhere between 500 in some cases up to 5,000 as well. So that's the only fee that a buyer pays whenever they're buying off-plan properties. Whenever a buyer is buying a ready property, then the fee is once again the 4% Dubai Land Department fee. Then there is also the brokerage fee, which is 2% of the purchase price paid by the buyer. Then there is a fee that is to be paid to the trustee office where the transfer is taking place. So the trustee office is basically a Dubai Land Department registered third-party entity wherein the buyer and the seller go and they get the transfer of the property done. So that fee can vary. If a property sale price is above 500,000 dirhams, then the trustee office fee is about 4,200. If the property sale price is below 500,000 dirhams, then the trustee office fee is about 2,100. In addition to that, there is a fee for no objection certificate from the developer, which can vary between 500 dirhams to 1,000 dirhams, and in some cases even 1,500 dirhams. If a buyer is obtaining a mortgage, then there are certain add-on fee as well to be paid for that. So broadly speaking, whenever any buyer is buying a ready property, they ought to factor in add-on cost of roughly 6.1%, which broadly covers all the other fee that they would be paying. And if a buyer is buying an off-plan property, they would essentially factor in a fee of 4.05% or so as their cost of transaction. So this basically covers the fee as well when we're talking about any kind of real estate transactions. Another topic I want to touch on upon is the trustee that I mentioned earlier. So the buying process in Dubai is extremely smooth. It's very streamlined, and once it's any property that needs to exchange hand between an individual to an individual. It could be a property under construction, it could be a ready property. Basically a property that has been sold by a developer or currently owned by an individual and another individual is buying it. After the contract F is in place, after NOC has been obtained, if there is a mortgage in it, after that has been sorted, both the parties, the buyer and the seller, go to the trustee office on the day of the transfer, sign off on the purchase contract, and it's not sort of physical signing, it's essentially putting in your Emirates ID or presenting your passport and carrying out a digital signature. And within the next 1 to 2 hours, you generally get the approval. So the buyer receives the title deed on their email, digitally sent to them, and upon the approval of the resale transaction, the seller receives the manager's checks and all the payments that are due to them. So a fairly simple procedure is done within a matter of couple of hours. So that broadly covers the areas where foreign investors can buy properties in Dubai, different types of properties that they can Dubai, and the procedures that are carried out along with the cost element as well. If you have any other questions that are linked to this particular topic, please feel free to drop a comment or reach out directly to us, and I'd be happy to personally answer them for you. And don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube page, and be on the lookout as well for our next video, which will cover another topic which is linked to the timeline that takes for any kind of property transaction in Dubai. Thank you.